Over the weekend, President Trump endorsed a potential primary challenger to Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. On social media, Trump said he was backing Representative Julia Letlow, who won a special election in 2021 and also hasn't formally entered this race as of yet. Cassidy is an occasional critic who voted to convict Trump in his second impeachment trial, the one about January 6th. But he also has tried to endear himself to the president, offering a critical vote for Trump's choice for Health Secretary RFK Jr., despite personal reservations. Cassidy chose to respond then on social media this weekend, writing in part, quote, "If Congresswoman Letlow decides to run, I'm confident I'll win." Joining us now, congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, Max Cohen. Max, this really did send shockwaves, especially because, as would be typical, Republicans should protect Republican incumbents. And yet in Trump's Washington, if you've ever been against him, he will now come in against you, I guess, is the lesson.
100%. And this really puts the top Senate Republican, John Thune, at odds with President Donald Trump at a time when that's pretty tricky given the tight margins in the Senate and how some Senate Republicans have voted against President Donald Trump recently. And Thune actually spoke to President Trump over the weekend and said, "Mr. President, I don't agree with this, especially when Bill Cassidy, if he's now spurned, could be a deciding vote on some key issues." But this really was a remarkable, I don't want to say betrayal, because Cassidy, as you mentioned, had voted for impeachment. But considering how much Bill Cassidy had done in the past couple of months to endear himself to President Trump, the fact that Trump just sent out this endorsement message before Letlow was even in the race just shows you how much Donald Trump thinks about these impeachment votes and how much he does not forget.
Yeah, and how retribution is still a common thread, even when you're just talking about basic politics. I also think if you zoom out even just one layer more, you talk about the way that this puts Thune at odds with the White House, but he's already fighting a bunch of battles in favor of incumbent Republicans who have messy, messy primaries. I'm thinking, of course, of Texas and the moves to save John Cornyn from a three-way primary there. I mean, talk a little bit about the ways that Republican leadership in the Senate is playing defense in places that they really shouldn't have to be playing defense, and the ways that Trump himself is complicating that.
Yeah, exactly. I think Texas is a great point because the Senate Leadership Fund, the top super PAC allied with John Thune, has spent millions and millions of dollars protecting John Cornyn from his race against Ken Paxton and Wesley Hunt. And so far, Cornyn has not pulled ahead. And it's been confirmed in the past couple of days that Trump is not going to endorse Cornyn. And that Texas situation is interesting because Bill Cassidy, he's probably looking at that funding and thinking, well, that's really nice that John Cornyn getting all this backup on the airwaves. What about me? SLF indicated in a statement this weekend that they would not do the same for Cassidy because they see Louisiana as a safe red seat, whereas Texas, they worry if Ken Paxton wins that primary, that's in play for Democrats.
Yeah, so Republicans have some mess to sort out through the midterms. Democrats also trying to find their footing, but I've got some new reporting this morning on some efforts that they've been making in terms of bolstering their messaging operation, specifically that of Cory Booker, who has taken on the messaging role for the Senate Democratic Caucus. He's now telling me that they've had a monstrous leap, in his words, towards their engagement and follower count on social media, roughly 430% increase in engagements compared to last year in 2024, 20 million new followers for all Senate Democrats. So folks have been seeing more Democrats on their screen. That's in part because of Cory Booker. Talk about the impact of this. Democrats trying to level that digital playing field. And according to some charts that I saw from Booker's office, they're really doing so and dwarfing Republicans. But does it matter? Is the internet real life?
Well, I think the internet shows where the energy is, right? And there's certainly a lot of anti-Trump energy among the progressive Democratic base right now. And in a way, when they can't actually influence policy too much in Washington, given their minority status in both houses of Congress, social media is a way in which voters can kind of show their anger, their discontent with the Trump administration. And what Democrats have said all along, the voters, is they want fighters, people who will fight back against the Trump administration. And many Senate Democrats are taking that message to social media. And what you reported with Cory Booker, I think, is a really good example of how the party is feeling heading into the midterms. They want to retweet. They want to post. They want to say, yes, this is a candidate I want, on Instagram, anywhere else. And that's showing, I think, perhaps in some of the polling, a president in power, their party normally suffers in the midterms. And I think Democrats have the energy and the enthusiasm when you talk to voters.
Yeah, and I think Booker really took to heart some of the criticism that his party got in the aftermath of the 2024 election. There were all these conversations about, well, how can Democrats compete with the ecosystem and the environment that Republicans have built online and in podcasting spaces? Booker is now saying, OK, I've at least tried to level that playing field a little bit beyond just me. He is one of the most followed Democrats on social media, but now extending it deeper into the caucus and pointing to a number of examples of things that went viral on whatever news of day items there were. Congressional reporter for Punchbowl News, Max Cohen, thank you for coming on, starting the week with us. Don't